Welcome in on this Thursday afternoon. It is WKXX Live, Fox Sports 102.9. Chase Robinson here. Got Gerhard Mathangani along as well for this Thursday edition of the show. Would love to hear from you today. 256-413-1029. That is 256-413-1029. That'll get you in to join us today. Coming up at 2:30, Brad Law of the Auburn Sports Network will join us, and we will get some insight on last night's win for the Auburn Tigers. They took down Florida. And then coming up at 3 o'clock, Chris Marler of the College Football Uncensored podcast, as well as Saturday Down South. He will join us, talk some college football. So busy show today, and again, we invite you to be a part of it. But good night as we were excited for SEC play to open up in college basketball. Excuse me, and it did not disappoint with some really good games last night.
Yeah, we certainly had some good ones. Both teams in state got W's out of the SEC, and then a couple of other interesting games across the league. We knew it was going to be interesting because we had a few of the ranked teams going on the road in game one. Bama being one of them, going on the road to Starkville. Kentucky also on the road. Arkansas also on the road. I know we'll dive into some of those games a little bit later on, but Auburn and Bama both going on the road. Both, I think, had different kinds of tests going on the road in their respective games. They weren't must-win games, but they were kind of benchmark setters as the season moves along. And I think both teams, played really well. Some things that they can improve on, but obviously the number one thing is being able to start the conference slate 1-0, and both did.
Yep, they both did, and Auburn, like you said, went over Florida. Excuse me, 61-58. Alabama a win in Starkville, 78-67 for Alabama. Something that really helped the Tide was depth last night. Some guys able to come off the bench and pick up where some of the starters couldn't do, and some foul trouble at times. But I think the depth for Alabama, we've seen that through a lot of the games this year, but I think we're really going to see that as we get into conference play.
Most certainly, and Coach announced after the game that Darius Miles will be out for a little while with a personal matter. So, with him out, it obviously, gives somebody else a chance to step up and step in and be able to help the team out in a really big way. And they were able to get that production again yesterday. It's one of those things to me where if you can create depth, if you can go 7, 8, 9 deep here early, especially early in the season, then you're in a really good position. You're in really good shape. And I think Alabama is finding that out kind of in real time. You can lean on some of your young guys. We've talked about guys like Miller and Clowney. And then you have other players that that you will be able to rely on towards the end of the season, guys like Quinterly and some of the others, Bediako, another one of those guys. Sears has really stepped on here in the early part of the season. But you get guys like Pringle, who had a great basketball game. Also Welch, who came off the bench and had a good game as well. You just like to be able to see this level of production from some of the guys that come off the bench. And so in order to have this kind of depth and to be able to trust them with heavy minutes, you got to be able to play them in big games on the road, and they all showed up.
Yeah, you're right. They did all show up. Great win last night for the Alabama Crimson Tide there against Mississippi State. You mentioned Mark Sears with 20, Brandon Miller with 19, Noah Clowney with 14, Javon Quinterly 10, the points being spread around. Overall, the Crimson Tide shot 45% from the field, 37 from behind the three-point line, and played a good game against a good Mississippi State team. We talked with Chris Stewart yesterday, kind of about Mississippi State, and anytime you can start conference playoff with a win, that's kind of a big momentum booster there.
Yeah, and especially with Alabama, the way they play, they can win in different styles. Remember yesterday we talked about this. I asked Chris Stewart about what I thought the magic number of this game would be. Vegas had the game about a 71-70 type game. Mississippi State, we knew, struggled to score offensively. So if Alabama could get to the magic number that I put it at in my head, and I even said it on the show last week or yesterday, was 75. They can get to 75, they'd be okay. Got to 78, and Mississippi State just couldn't keep pace with Alabama. But then if Alabama needs to slow down the pace and play a lot more defense, they're capable of doing that too. So not only are they deep, but they're really versatile in their style as well.
Nate Oates spoke after the game just on the importance of this win over Mississippi State.
Yeah, obviously, being able to look around the league and see what everybody else is able to do. He has a pretty good, eye on the rest of college basketball, knowing that you can't take these kind of games for granted.
I was proud of our guys. We kind of overcame a couple of their guys having really good shooting nights. Keyshawn Murphy, with 3 for 3 in the first half. Obviously we knew he could shoot, but, when McNair stepped out and hit a 3 on us. So they kind of maybe counteracted the fact Tolu couldn't make a free throw, which obviously helped us. So, there's different things went different ways, but our guys stepped up. I thought Brandon and Mark hit big shots there late when needed them. I thought Jaden Bradley did a great job running the team. He ended up with 7 assists tonight, which is big for us. I thought he was aggressive against their press. I thought our depth really helped us. We had guys in foul trouble. Charles gets in foul trouble early in the second half, and Pringle has to play a lot more minutes than he's used to, and I thought he did well with them. So proud of the team. Road wins are not easy to get in this league. It's evidenced by the other games tonight. There were some really good teams went on the road and couldn't get a win. So, we went on the road against a top 25 team and able to come out with a pretty convincing win. I think it speaks to what our guys were able to do, especially on the defensive end.
Good start there for Alabama, and he's right. They did a good job there on the defensive end of the ball. For Mississippi State, he mentioned free throws last night. Mississippi State 50% from the free throw line, 18 of 36. Imagine if the Bulldogs were able to hit some of those free throws. 36% from the field and 37% from behind the three-point line for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where if you're Alabama right now, you could say, hey, we won the game, but we very easily could have let this be a lot closer. And most teams will not shoot this poorly from the free throw line, especially one of their top stars, Davis, shooting up from the free throw line, from the field, over 5 from the 3-point line, over 5 from the field, over 11, and then from the free throw line, just not good as a team overall, and 3 for 15 for Smith from the free throw line. I mean, even a bad shooter will shoot 10 of 15, 9 of 15. So you can't necessarily rely on that game to game. And so he mentioned the turnovers earlier in the press conference, 19 turnovers, way too many. And then all the fouls that gave them shots at extra points, way too many as well for the tie. So it's an 11-point win. However, if it's not Mississippi State missing some free throws, that Alabama knows that this game could have been a lot closer. So it's one of those situations where you take the win, glad about it, but you obviously know that you can play a lot better.
So Alabama gets the win over Mississippi State. Auburn gets the win over the Florida Gators. They're inside Neville Arena, and it was hard-fought game for the Tigers, but they were on the 61 end of the 61-58 score. So good win for Auburn. Kind of start things off on the right foot against a good Florida team.
Yeah, but the situation is this. Auburn shot for the game 21 of 35, 38%, 3 of 14 from downtown. You're not beating good teams doing that. The good thing, though, is they out-rebounded Florida 40 to 28 on the boards, and so that gave them second-chance opportunities. Auburn, the question will always be for the entire season. The question is going to be if they can score consistently. And if they can't score consistently, they'll lose to the teams that can, but if they can score consistently, they'll be one of the best teams in the country because they play such good defense. They understand that defense is where they have to make their bed, so to speak. But this is a basketball team to me that is 11-2. They're playing a certain style. To me, this represents like a football team that runs the wishbone or the triple option. You just have to run your own style. And if you run into a team that can defend it well, you're in trouble because you don't really have a left hand.
Yeah.
Now, can it be developed over the course of the season? For sure. I don't know how long. I don't know if they're going to go from an average of 60-something points per game to 70, 80 points per game. But the way they play defense and the way they crash the boards, that's certainly the way their bread's buttered.
Wendell Green Jr., 14 points. John I. Broome, 14 points. Jalen Williams, 13 points. Chris Moore, Katie Johnson, both at 8. And then a couple of players with 2. I feel like and we've talked about offense being an issue for Auburn. The points are just not as spread out as we're used to with Auburn. Usually we've got 7 guys
Right.
that could score, that are going to score.
Yeah.
That's so condensed down to a very short list of guys on this roster who are going to put points on the board consistently.
Yeah, I think that's one of the concerns for this for this coaching staff in general, but the ones that especially scout the offense is trying to find guys that can give you consistent production each game. And last year, you're right, because teams were so able to focus on Jabari, that left Kessler wide open for dunks. And every now and again, he'd go 12 points, 10 boards. And KD Johnson would have a 15-point game every now and again. And then you'd get, all these other guys being able to play off of your star. Because you don't really necessarily have a star, you just have to kind of find the hot hand. And it's kind of hard to find the hot hand a lot of times, especially in college basketball. And so I think they'll figure it out as the season goes along. And Coach Bruce Pearl, Stephen Pearl, the rest of that staff, they're smart enough coaches to be able to guide this team along. But as of right now, you have to just kind of hang your hat on the defense and then find out which guys. John I. Broome was the example last night of a guy that can just take a game over.
Yeah.
And then you hope maybe you could find that consistency. Maybe it's him, maybe it's somebody else. But you need to find that throughout the course of the season. Flanagan came off the bench 1 of 4. He's very capable of giving you a 15, 20-point game. And so you just have to kind of work it as the year goes along, but it's fun to work it in wins instead of trying to work it in losses and really try to get yourself back in the standings.
Yeah, and there was 12 lead changes in this game. It came down to a steal there at the end, and Auburn was able to walk away with a 61-58 win. I think Auburn needed that. If this had gone the other way, Florida won this game. Auburn is in a tough situation. Losing your first conference game, losing in your home arena. Auburn really needed that home win last night to get things started right.
You and I both picked Auburn in large part because they were playing in the jungle, and that has represented a solid home court advantage. And you would hope that the Auburn fans will continue to support the team because they'll really need it. I think, in the past, it's like come out and support a top 5 team. And now it's like come out and distract the other team, make it really tough for our opponents as we continue to get things going. For Auburn, I think if they look the same offensively a month from now than they do now, I think it's going to be real trouble. If they can consistently get a little bit better offensively than a month from now, I think you'll see an improved basketball team because the defensive effort, like they say in football all the time, the defense travels. The defensive effort will be there night to night.
So Auburn gets the win over Florida 61-58 last night. In Neville Arena. There was several other SEC games going on last night. We will talk about those after the break, see how we did in picking games as well as we continue here on WKXX Live. It is a Thursday afternoon. We've got much more to come coming up next.
I've got a map.
It is a Thursday afternoon, Fox Sports 102.9, 218. Chase Robinson and Gerhard Mathagani here with you. Coming up at 2:30, Brad Law will join us from the Auburn Sports Network. We'll talk Auburn basketball with Brad. Looking at some other SEC games. Now, we picked games yesterday, and Tennessee defeated Ole Miss 63-59. We both picked Tennessee in that one. Here's where we both missed one, as LSU defeated Arkansas 60-57 last night. So we both picked Arkansas. We missed that. And then Missouri, you called it. Missouri beat Kentucky 89-75. You got that one. I missed that one. You were 4 for 5 yesterday. I was 3 for 5 yesterday in our game picks. But I think the big surprise, the LSU Tigers. We talked about it. Both teams were 11-1 coming into this game.
Yep.
We didn't know a whole lot about LSU. We knew Arkansas had gotten some good wins. They were playing good basketball, but we can consider, I guess, LSU as a team to watch now in the SEC.
Yeah, most certainly. And this is another one of those games like the Alabama game where a good team going on the road to face another good team. As you mentioned, we didn't know to the extent of how good LSU is. Every now and again, you'll get these fool's gold starts to the season. I don't think LSU was that. Holding a really good Arkansas team to 57 points is pretty insane. And considering their football team scored 53 points, I mean, it was just a decent day for Arkansas one way and then in the other. But to me, this is kind of it's reminiscent of what the league will be. I think the league will be really tough to go on the road and win. And last night shows it to you. Kentucky going on the road to Missouri, can't get a win there. Arkansas going on the road to LSU, can't get a win there. And so you have to savor these top 5 or these top 10, top 15, 20, 25 games. And then when you add the road factor into it, I think it really compresses it. This is part of the reason why I picked Auburn. I don't know if I picked Auburn yesterday if they're not in the jungle.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I picked Missouri yesterday if they're not at home. And it's one of those situations where we shouldn't be all that surprised that LSU won a big home game because they've been doing it for a long time down there. We didn't know about this team, but it looks like this team is going to be the real deal.
So big win for LSU. You mentioned Missouri getting the win over Kentucky. And I know this isn't a Kentucky team of the past, one that that's been a top team in the SEC, a top team in the country. This is not what we're dealing with this year. But that's a big win for Missouri, their program, to be able to beat a caliber team like Kentucky.
Yeah, most certainly. And Kentucky was seen by a lot of people, the media, and I believe the coaches poll has Kentucky number 1 overall. But, I mean, this is a Kentucky team that they have to rely on a lot of youngsters, a lot of young guys playing in the game, and they're not super deep. They played 4 guys off the bench yesterday. Meanwhile, Missouri got a really, really solid day out of Brown. He scored 30 points. Kobe Brown was sensational in the game. Actually, a guy from Huntsville, Alabama, having a really solid day, 30 points overall to lead them. And they also had contributions, 4 guys scoring in double figures. In addition to Brown, Demoy Hodge scored 15 in the effort, then a couple guys with 12 off the bench. To me, this is a Missouri team that I think has a lot of talent, but not necessarily the same talent level player 1 to player 15 as Kentucky has. But it shows you just how good some of these kind of veteran-led teams can be. Missouri, one of those. And so Kentucky now 0-1 starting the year, and you just don't want to get off on the wrong foot. It puts a lot of pressure on yourself to get back up there. Now Kentucky's got the talent to do so, but it's an 0-1 start to start the year.
Of course, Tennessee right now, they're ranked 7, Alabama 8, Arkansas 9. Tennessee and Alabama both get wins to start the year. Are we looking at, and I know there's a lot of basketball to be played, but I think right now we're looking at probably some battles there between the Vols and the Tide, and we'll see if one of those can win the SEC, because they're both very strong teams.
Yeah, very, very good. Reminiscent of what we're seeing in football right now.
Yeah.
It's kind of translating to basketball. Hopefully the backboard and the rim don't end up in the river. But it's one of the situations, I think, that Tennessee this year, because they have a lot of these kind of they have a nice meld. They have a nice meld of really talented young guys, freshmen and sophomores, mixed in with Vescovi, who's back again this year, scored 22 points yesterday there in that win. Didn't beat Ole Miss by this margin I thought they would, but to me is a really solid Kentucky team, solid Tennessee team, and they, like Alabama, can kind of play both ways. They could beat you by scoring at a really high level, and they can also beat you kind of in a grinded out kind of game. That's the reason why I would love to see when Tennessee and Alabama hook up a little bit later down the road, what that game will look like, because both teams can play both different styles.
Yeah, you're right. Should be a fun SEC basketball slate as Alabama getting the win last night, Auburn getting the win last night, and we've talked about it, just the level of basketball here in the state now, and how it has changed for the good, and the trajectory is up of just the caliber of teams. But the Sanford Bulldogs also getting a win last night. They hosted Mercer there at the Pete Hanna Center and on ESPNU, and the Sanford Bulldogs got a win. Jacksonville State begins their play tomorrow night in the A-Sun. So good basketball all around. They got North Alabama, another in-state team. UAB doing well. So basketball is high right now in the state of Alabama, and I could be more excited about that.
Yeah, most certainly. And every year we kind of try to forecast, how many teams from the state can we get into to the big dance. Last year, obviously, Bama made it in, Auburn made it in, Jacksonville State made it in. This year, can those three, and then maybe a UAB, maybe a Sanford winning the SoCon. We're getting to the time of year where those decisions are made, and you don't want the committee making those, especially if you're, not a Power 5 school. You kind of want to earn it. And so Jacksonville State will have their chance when they open up conference play in the A-Sun. Sanford off to a really nice start in the SoCon. Sun Belt is always going to be competitive with Troy and South Alabama. We've seen South Alabama as Jacksonville State has played them. And also Alabama's played them as well. So this is going to be a really solid time of year, I think, for Division I basketball here in the state of Alabama. And most teams off to a really nice start after conference play. And we'll see how it all goes as they now face league opponents.
So college basketball in full force. Jacksonville State game coming up tomorrow night. They host North Alabama. 6 o'clock tip, 5:30 airtime from the Gamecock Sports Network. You'll hear that one right here on Fox Sports 102.9. We'll jump to a break. Brad Law of the Auburn Sports Network is next.
The Press Box.
We are back here on WKXX Live, Fox Sports 102.9. Chase Robinson and Gerhard Mathangani moving through this Thursday with you. The Auburn Tigers getting a win last night over the Florida Gators to get SEC play underway. And to talk some Auburn basketball, we welcome on our friend Brad Law of the Auburn Sports Network. Brad, always great to talk with you. How are you today?
It is good to talk with you too, Chase. Always, we're doing well. It's a beautiful day here. Gone are the 8-degree temperatures and things of that nature. I'm at a playground right now watching my kids play. So we've done a full 180 from earlier this week, and so we're doing well. Hope everybody there is doing well also.
Absolutely, doing great, and it was a good win last night for the Auburn Tigers, and I'm sure a great atmosphere in the jungle. Took a hard-fought win, but the Tigers did it. Tell us how they did it.
They did it with defense, and they've done it with defense most of this season. I think early on we kind of saw that this team wasn't going to be you're still waiting. The Bryce Browns don't come around very often. Those are kind of generational type players. He's the SEC leader all time in 3-point shooting, and so you kind of got used to seeing him knock down threes, and you saw Auburn as a real high-paced offensive team. The last couple of years, you've seen a little more trend toward defense. They've been among the nation's leaders in blocked shots. And this year, especially bringing in the OVC Defensive Player of the Year, Janai Broome, and adding him into the mix and him becoming a real staple for the Auburn team, they've taken on more of a defensive identity, and that's what they did last night. They pushed Colin Castleton out to the free throw line or beyond all night long. He only got 6 shot attempts. He was 1 for 6, and that was on a drive to the basket. He never got a pass on the low post. And this is a guy, 6'11", 250, who just killed Auburn anytime that he's played the Tigers. Went over 20 points in both meetings last year, and it's just hard to find an answer for him. And so last night, the defensive effort against him was sensational. They just did enough offensively. Making 5 of their last 7 shots, scoring the first 7 points of the game. All that adds up, and but primarily the way they did it was with defense.
Hey, Brad, Gerhard here. Coach Pearl has said this time and time again, and it's gotten to where I've started to take notice that he talks about how Janai could be the best player on the floor on any given day, and almost says it as in a way to like try to boost his own confidence. Do you believe that he'll be the kind of guy that they might go to offensively? I know he's a great defensive player, but maybe go to offensively to help lead this team because of the fact that they haven't been able to find that consistent scorer offensively so far?
Yeah, I think he and Jalen Williams both can wear that moniker. And I think if you're going to be an elite team, you need 2 or 3 players who on any given night, one of those 3 or 2 of those 3 can kind of step up and say, this is my game. I'm looking for my shot. You have a couple of guys in Jalen Williams and Chris Moore who have been role players the last 3 years with this program, and now it's their team. They have to be the guys. And I think that as the season has gone on, you're starting to see that a little bit. You're seeing a little more assertiveness from Moore and from Williams, and I think you're seeing a little more out of Janai Broome. He hasn't shot the ball well in the first half of the last 2 games, but his number of shots has increased, and his shooting has been a lot better in the second half of the last 2 games than it's been in the first half. So, maybe he's got to find his way, settle in, get into a rhythm a little bit offensively. But, I think that the identity of this team as we go through conference play now is going to be set by Janai Broome, Jalen Williams, and Chris Moore. 3 guys who've done it defensively, but they've got to look for their shot more. They've got to have more confidence and assertiveness offensively.
How do you think the trip out west, the USC, the Washington game, how important were those games right before SEC play to help this Auburn team get ready for what tough schedule is up ahead in the Southeastern Conference?
It at least gives them a taste. Now, Alaska Airlines Arena is not the same as Bud Walton Arena or Rupp Arena or Thompson Bowling or any of those places in the SEC. In terms of atmosphere, the students weren't in. There were still good crowds at USC and Washington, but it's at least a taste. And Bruce said it last week on those trips. He said, how am I going to take guys into Athens? How do I take guys into Baton Rouge? How do I take guys into all the places I've got to take them this year? without any kind of taste of that first. Like if you can't handle USC and can't handle Washington, from an atmosphere perspective, how are you going to be able to handle those places? So I think it helped in that regard. They've got neutral site wins, neutral site games over quality teams, and then you add 2 more quality teams on true road floors. And I think it kind of dipped their toe in, or maybe put them waist deep into that kind of atmosphere. And, of course, their next game is the first SEC game at Georgia. So that West Coast trip gets them waist deep in the water, and they're ready to go all the way in next week.
Yeah, it seems like yesterday was a really special day for both the Pearls and for obviously Florida's coach as well, their basketball coach and Todd, being able to kind of get back together again. These guys that have had this crazy great history with one another, with Todd Golden playing for Bruce at one point and then joining them. From your perspective, how did you see that transaction go? Because it felt like one of those situations where you don't want to coach against your friends, but then right after the game, it was right back to the friendship of old.
It really was. In fact, I think Bruce was a little late getting up to the print media and the internet media after the game, because after he did our radio interview, which he does right after he talks to the team, he spent a very long time with Coach Golden, a guy who was on Bruce's staff for 2 years. Like Stephen Pearl and Coach Golden have been close for more than a decade. Todd Golden, when he got into coaching, actually called Bruce, and Bruce said, "Don't do it. Don't get into it. Do something else." So he did for a little while, and then ultimately he couldn't resist it and got into coaching. And then BP called him up and said, "Help us build the Auburn program here." And so there's a bond there. There's some deep roots. Bruce credits Coach Golden with helping get the program off the ground at Auburn. And then, he said last night, I've got now added stress watching his teams play because I want them to win every game. It's very hard to compete against somebody that you love like a son. You almost don't want to beat them.
We're talking with Brad Law of the Auburn Sports Network. Auburn gets the win last night over Florida. Georgia up next. What would you say are a couple of things that the team is going to be working on in preparation for Georgia?
I think it's continuing to find the offensive rhythm and have it go through those big guys on the inside. I thought one of the greatest examples, and I understand why Jalen made the pass, and I won't say this to criticize Jalen, but in the closing stages of that game, I guess Auburn was up by 1 and had the ball, and Jalen Williams had a wide open 3 in the left corner. And he goes up in the air, defender lunges out after him and gets in the air. It's still an open shot. It's not going to be a contested 3. And he tries to pass underneath to Janai Broom. Now, if he gets the pass there, it's a wide open layup or dunk, and Auburn's up 3. What happened, though, was the defender made a sensational play on the ball, caught the ball in midair, and Florida had a chance to get a go-ahead bucket there at the end before ultimately it was stolen and Auburn converted on the other end. But I think that's a play where in the future the coaches want Jalen to look at that play and say, that's your shot. And Janai Broom underneath being wide open, that's an offensive rebounder. And those are the rules on that kind of play. Sometimes guys can be too unselfish offensively. So I think the coaches will continue to drill into these guys, whether it's Wendell, whether it's Janai, Jalen, Chris Moore, take your shots. They're always going to focus on defense. One of the cool things about going on the West Coast trip last week, guys, I got to watch a lot of practices and shoot-arounds, and they are more intense defensively in practice than they are even offensively. I mean, it is rugged to watch those teams go at it and practice defensively. So that's not going to change. I think they're going to look for that same sort of intentionality from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah, and Bruce Pearl said that the conference play and the conference season, I thought it was hilarious, his description of it, is going to be a rock fight. And it just seems to me that they will have to just kind of bring that rugged, just kind of bruiser type of mentality to every game. Is that something that you just think that will continue throughout the course of the season?
I think so. And as the offense continues to go more through those 3 guys that I've mentioned already, then I think it's even more so. I mean, I think that becomes your primary offensive identity. It's all right. Your identity is already a defensive identity. And so if the offensive game looks like the defensive game, that's fine. There have been 4 games now this year where Auburn shot under 40% from the field. And you go, well, that's not good. This team's not very consistent offensively. And that's true, but they've won 3 out of those 4 games, including the SEC opener. So as long as your defense is a little bit better than your offense, as long as you allow 1 fewer point than you score, then whether you score 85 or 55, it goes in the win column. And I think the majority of Auburn's games this year, with the exception of, maybe there's some games where Katie Johnson and Alan Flanagan get hot from distance, get to the foul line a lot, and can put up some points. Auburn did shoot better than 65% in 2 of the 3 games prior to last night in the second half of those games. So they're capable, but they're also winning the games where they don't shoot particularly well. So, yeah, I think it's safe to say that those offensive explosion-type games will be the exception rather than the rule.
He is Brad Law of the Auburn Sports Network. Brad, appreciate your time as always, hopping on and talking some Auburn basketball with us. We will do it again very soon, but appreciate your time today.
You got it, guys. Have a great day. War Eagle to the Auburn fans in Northeast Alabama.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Brad Law, Auburn Sports Network, joining us this afternoon here on WKXX Live. We'll jump to a break. We will talk some college football coming up. Chris Marler, Saturday Down South, joins us at 3 o'clock. We've got a lot to cover. Stay with us.
Are you receiving unemployment?
It is WKXX Live, Fox Sports 102.9. Chase and Gerhard here with you. We had a couple SEC teams in action. We had a thriller with Arkansas and Kansas. Arkansas winning it 55-53 over the Jayhawks. It sounds like a basketball score.
Yeah, exactly. It does. And considering the basketball team scored 57, it's a interesting scenario. But yeah, they gave up a huge lead, 24-point lead at one point. I was at the gym and I saw they were up, 31 to 3, 31-10 at the time. I was like, okay, well, it's a nice win for Sam Pittman to go on to end the year. And next thing I know, I see in my phone, it's like, hey, Kansas came back, and Kansas had an unbelievable year for Kansas.
Yeah,
and it would have been very embarrassing had Arkansas lost that game, but they ended up getting the win. We gave out our grades last week from earlier this week about SEC coaches. This is part of the reason why Sam Pittman didn't get that next letter. He didn't go from the C to the B. Not necessarily couldn't forecast this game, but they just didn't end the year the way that you would want a team that has so many expectations as they did in the year.
Yeah, and but Arkansas did get the win. The SEC has not been great in bowl games, so it was nice to see Arkansas get a win. The other SEC team did not get a win, and it wasn't really even close. Texas Tech beat Ole Miss 42-25 in the Texas Bowl, and I think Ole Miss was already disappointed they were in the Texas Bowl after what they were projected, after really the start to the year.
Yeah.
But they've now lost 5 of their last 6 games and the last 4 straight. This is not what we should be seeing from a Lane Kiffin coach team.
I think at every turn I tried to find the reasons why, because they started the season 7-0. They looked like world beaters. They were dominating everybody. They were running the football. They were throwing the football. They had Jackson Dart, who looked at one point like almost like an all SEC type quarterback if he wasn't in a league pack full of good ones. And then the Auburn stuff came up, and that maybe provided a distraction. So I thought maybe just an anomaly. Then I thought maybe the Auburn distraction. Well, both of those aren't the case anymore. Auburn's moved on. Lane has signed his extension. And so it's like, what's the deal now? And so to have Texas Tech, come in and do this, it was really interesting. But then once you take a look at, kind of a deeper look at the game, Ole Miss went for it on 4th down a bunch. Tell me where you've seen that and seen or heard that before. Yeah. 4th down conversions, not being able to go for it or not being able to make them. They were 2 for 7 on 4th down and 5 of 13 on 3rd down. So just a lot of wasted possessions. And you give the ball back to a really good offense that could throw the football everywhere. They did so yesterday, throwing for 242 yards. Ole Miss actually threw the ball a lot more than I thought they would. I thought this would be more of a ground and pound type situation. They didn't really run the ball to their normal standards. But yeah, a really interesting situation and interesting the way this whole game and this end of the year played out for Coach Kiffin and the Rebels.
Yeah, it is. And Kiffin spoke after the game last night, just about kind of ending their season with this loss to a team like Texas Tech.
You're going to, as a coach, you break down the game and you say, okay, yards, points, all that stuff. And there's a lot of similarities in the running and throwing of the ball by the teams. But, you're going to look really glaring at 4th downs and turnovers. So, they did a great, both were very aggressive. We were 2 of 7 on the 4th downs. They were 5 of 6. And I thought they had really good plays and some speed option, checking the different things. So I put that on coach, and I thought their 4th down schemes were better than ours, and ours were actually shorter yardage sometimes, and weren't able to move them. And so I give them a lot of credit for how well they coached and how hard they played. And after the 4th down, then turnovers. So do some analytic chart, and you're going to be 99.9% if you don't make 5 4th downs and you turn over 5 times. That's 10. Now one of those 4th down is a turnover, so that's really 9 times, right? So if I just did the math right, that's 9 times you give them the ball back without kicks going or scores going on. So that's gonna not bode well, and it didn't tonight.
Those are not good numbers. I mean, just that's rough. when you walk away from a game and have those kind of numbers following you.
Yeah, and you know it's tough to play from behind anyways, but they got down so bad very quickly early on, and Coach alluded to part of that was because of the turnovers. Jackson Dart had 3 interceptions. The team overall had 5 turnovers, and then you had the 4th downs. It's a situation I believe that for Ole Miss, a team that played with such discipline at the beginning of the season, they really fell off towards the end of the year. And yeah, when you give even an average team that many extra possessions, well, you're going to be in trouble, as the season goes along. And they couldn't get the run game going. It gave Judkins the football 23 times. He couldn't break 100 yards there in the game. Meanwhile, the Red Raiders, known for throwing the ball all over the field, only had 242 yards, well below their average throwing the football. So they didn't even have to really throw it all that much to win the football game. But they got off on a wrong foot, and they never really recovered a little bit after that. And so it was not a good day overall for Ole Miss, and hasn't really been a good bowl season so far for the SEC.
It has not, and that's surprising. We usually see the SEC perform much better in bowl games, but they have not so far this year. But tough loss, 42-25 for Ole Miss to Texas Tech, and you got to think what does Ole Miss do next? Not a great recruiting class.
Yeah.
Who knows what he'll bring out of the portal, but there's some work to do in Oxford.
Yeah, the self-described portal king will have to hit that portal really hard in order to reboot this team. And I mean, there are some positives coming back, namely the SEC Freshman of the Year and the All-American freshman and Judkins, the running back, who will be back again coming up next year. But still a lot to answer for this team going into next season. And the thing is that if next season, if they get off to a really great start, you can't really celebrate that much either, because you're going to think, well, they won 7 straight games to start 2022, and then they end up losing pretty badly in a bowl game that they probably were not all that thrilled to be in. So, with aspirations of New Year's Six bowl, possibly the outside shot at the playoff, 7 games into the year, and here you sit now with the losses that they have and the way that they came. It's not like these just kind of field goal games. It's some really bad losses. A lot of questions to answer, a lot of soul searching down in Ole Miss and down in Oxford as they get ready for 23.
Yes, and it was you mentioned a typical Lane Kiffin coached game where you walk away scratching your head at some of the decisions, going for it on 4th down, and we'll see what they do moving forward, what he's able to do, what they can do offensively, and the pieces they can put in place to get back to. I think there's a lot of expectations on Lane Kiffin and his coaching ability. He's a good coach. We've seen great offensive mind, but we'll see if he can get this in direction I think he wants and everybody else wants to see a Lane Kiffin coach team go.
Yeah, and you like the aggressiveness, but you just don't want it to be, bonehead is too strong of a word, because I don't think it's that. It's just, if you're going to have it, have some discipline and execution to be able to do it and not coach your way out of the game. I'll give you the first few possessions for Ole Miss yesterday. Turn it over on downs, touchdown, interception, turn it over on downs. You just can't get any momentum when you do that. Now, to that point, even with just the array of mistakes that I just mentioned, they were only down 10 points at the time before the wheels fell off.
Yeah, and it's not a good day for Ole Miss, but we'll see if they can kind of use these 4 losses and bounce back from that next season and in the offseason. We'll talk more college football coming up next. Chris Marlar joins us from the College Football Uncensored podcast, as well as Saturday Down South. Always entertaining talking with Chris Marlar. We'll do that next.
The Press Box.
WKXX is live for the fastest 2 hours in sports talk radio. Get ready for Chase Robinson
He has got to be a player they can rely on in big situations.
and Gerhard Mathangani
Has the trust of his team. Sounds like the makeup of his team is in a really good space, and I believe that's because of the culture he's curated down there.
for WKXX Live. These guys have you covered from preps to pros and everything in between. Now, let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase and Gerhard for WKXX Live.
Hour number 2 underway on a Thursday afternoon. Chase Robinson, Gerhard Mathangani, we are here. We've got lots to cover over the next hour that we are with you this afternoon. And we're excited to welcome on Chris Marlar with the College Football Uncensored podcast, Saturday Down South. Chris, always great to talk with you. How are you today?
Well, I'm like so much better since you just put on Thunderstruck. I feel like I want to run through a wall right now. But yeah, that is like I just had a bunch of Mexican food because I think this is my favorite week of the year in terms of I don't know if it's like Tuesday or February because it's after Christmas. And so I'm just, I'm sitting here, I knew to do the interview, but I was like, I'm tired. And then I hear the beginning of Thunderstruck, and I'm amped up, man.
Well, I'm glad we could get you fired up for this. I want to talk some college football, and I want to start with the Ole Miss Rebels because last night, not a good night for Lane Kiffin and the Rebels. Really not a good finish to the season. What in the world happened with Ole Miss losing 4 straight, 5 of the last 6? What's going on in Oxford?
Yeah, I tweeted out last night as a joke that 2022 Lane Kiffin was doing his best 2021 Brian Harsin to close the season because it was, they lost like their last 4 games, and you look at the way they lost it in several ways. That they were undisciplined. The defense was like a shell of itself from a production standpoint where it was early in the season, they were in game. Not only were they in games, you had a lead late against Bama, and it seems like they continued to fall apart. Last night was. My God, I mean, that officiating was awful, but it didn't. I don't think it would have changed the outcome. I don't know what necessarily is going on in Oxford. I don't think it's something to be super concerned about because you return a majority of your production, especially on offense, for next year. But yeah, they got to get some things shored up for sure.
And it hasn't been a really good season overall, a good bowl season for the SEC. Do you feel that the moniker that this is the best conference in the entire country will take a bit of a hit here in this postseason?
Listen, I don't care if people in Ann Arbor and Columbus, Ohio, what they think about the SEC because it is the best conference in football and it's not particularly close. And I'm a little bit of I'm not a little bit. I'm a lot of bit of a homer when it comes to the SEC. But the most beautiful thing about this is, man, I was telling Chris Gordy about this earlier on ESPN Radio in Houston, and he asked me the same question, and I started cracking up, and I was like, no, as an SEC fan, like I grew up as a Bama fan, right? So the transition from beating our chest and the SEC chants, from that into, oh, well, I hope all of them lose because it doesn't help my team, is just a perfect transition. So I think a lot of fans can probably agree with that, and it's nice for the conference to look good. Also good for your rivals to lose every once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking with Chris Marlar, talking some college football. Got the playoffs coming up this weekend with the semifinals. Georgia, Ohio State. A lot of folks question whether the Buckeyes should be in the top 4. Does Georgia have any issues, you think, with the Buckeyes Saturday?
Well, one, again, I want to be very clear when I say this. Even as a Bama guy, Ohio State deserves to be in over Alabama. And I hate to say it because it sucks and I hate it, but Ohio State I think did deserve to be in there. It is. I don't know what it's like to lose by 22 points at home, but we'll get into that some other time. But yeah, I think that Ohio State and Ryan Day you have skill players out the wazoo, right? You got a lot of talent on that roster. It kind of mirrors each other in terms of the 5-star talent, 4-star talent, elite blue chip talent, and how close those two rosters are. I think Ryan Day and CJ Stroud, from a schematic standpoint, they will be able to scheme guys open and they'll have a couple of big plays. I just don't think that anybody in the country And you can, now that Tua's out, you could throw the Dolphins in there if you want. You could definitely throw the Jets. I don't think anybody's on the same page as UGA. I think they are head and shoulders above everyone else in the country. I think what you'll see early is Georgia come out. Maybe they get hit in the mouth a little bit early, but when you have to start trading blows with guys like Jalen Carter and Keely Ringo and some of those other guys on the defensive line and linebacker, just there's nobody in the country that can withstand that for 60 minutes.
Yeah, and you flip around to the other matchup. As Georgia gets ready to possibly make some history as the first two-time winner of the college football playoff championship, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to in that matchup specifically? When you could do it from a scheme to scheme, you could do it individual player matchups, O-line, D-line. What's the one thing that you'll be looking out for as those two get ready to battle?
Are you saying TCU and Michigan or Bama Ohio State?
No. Sorry. Yeah, the Georgia Ohio State game.
I think the receivers from Ohio State and the defensive backs from Georgia is the one I'm really looking for. Because here's the thing, man. Like, I live in Atlanta, and I've watched this program kind of like blossom, and as much as I've sometimes hated it, and especially if you follow me on Twitter, you can see that on a semi-daily basis. But I mean, the thing with Georgia that no one else in the country has been able to do, because I think Ohio State, again, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., you got some of those other really good receivers with last names I can't pronounce, and like they will be able to get open at times. But when you've seen Georgia, when they have wanted to prove a point, like when they have wanted to come out and again punch you in the mouth or embarrass you, they've been able to do that. You saw it against Tennessee. You saw it against Oregon earlier in the season. I think that the idea that the secondary is able to be exposed just because of what LSU did in the SEC championship game is such a farce. And I love that Ohio State fans are buying into it, but I don't think that is something like, if you think about it, we haven't seen that at any other time this year with that Georgia defense. And it's not, I've seen Saban do stuff, I think, similar to this. I wouldn't be surprised if this was Kirby, like, in the second half, like, take the foot off the gas, let's put some bad tape out there. And I don't care how that's done. Let's put some bad tape out there so we can get Ohio State, a little bit overconfident coming into this game.
Chris Marler, the College Football Uncensored podcast, joining us, talking some college football playoff semifinals. The other matchup, Michigan TCU. Michigan, they've had some injuries. Still a solid team. They've got TCU, the 3 seed. How do you see this game going down Saturday afternoon?
Well, yeah, I think that's going to be I enjoyed watching Michigan a little bit in the Big Ten championship game. I think their schedule was just softer than Charmin for most of the year, and I think that if you told me going into the season that TCU and Michigan would be facing off and that TCU would have a better strength of schedule and strength of record, I would have thought you were crazy. But, I think TCU is a team that it's almost like a little bit like, using an SEC example, obviously the records are different, but it's almost like South Carolina for me, which is like every single week we just keep thinking they're going to, like, at some point they're going to roll over. I mean, you saw it with the committee, the College Football Playoff Committee early on. TCU, they refused to give them any respect at all. I think that chip on their shoulder and that leadership also with Max Duggan is really, really important. I just don't know if they're physically stout enough to go up against Michigan for 60 minutes. I would love it. I would love to see it. I don't think it would necessarily be a better game against Georgia in the national championship, but I think that Michigan, just the style of football they play, and they'll be able to take the ball out of Duggan's hands a little bit with like that, that kind of slower tempo and run game. I think Michigan probably wins that game, probably pulls away late.
Yeah, speaking of that game, and let's just fast forward. Let's fast forward to 8 quarters, and Michigan goes on to win the national championship. Do you see Jim Harbaugh sticking around and joining his brother in the professional ranks?
I don't know why he would leave, but I tell you what's weird, man. Like, think about last year when he decided that he was going to do that, right? Like all of a sudden he was interested. Like you finally have this breakthrough. You get the respect of your peers, and like you beat Ohio State and all that kind of stuff, make the playoff, and he's all of a sudden flirting with this job with the Vikings, and he was doing it on National Signing Day. Like that's when there's not a worse timed like PR move, I feel like, outside of maybe Auburn and Brian Harsin that we've seen in like the last year. So I don't think like logic says no, but I'm not always sure that Jim Harbaugh, who's a grown man that drinks milk at dinner, still has logic as his like the forefront principle and priority of his like decision making.
We're talking college football with Chris Marler. I want to get your thoughts on Alabama, Kansas State. I mean, we saw Kansas State play good against TCU, beat them in that Big 12 championship game. Alabama has struggled at times through the year. They do have everybody on the field for the Tide. How do you see this one going Saturday morning in the Sugar Bowl?
I tell you what, man, it's a weird start. That 11 a.m. start is bizarre for a Sugar Bowl. It seems like that game should always be played at night with everyone rolling in off Bourbon Street. But, I love the fact that Bryce and Will Anderson are playing. I love that, with Jahmyr Gibbs and all that kind of stuff. Kansas State's a really good team. They're really good offensively, and they're able to, I almost like it better if Howard doesn't play, Will Howard, who's been the quarterback for the last, 6-7 games, and you bring back Martinez. I think that works in favor of Alabama. I'm not sure where they're going to go with that, but I don't, I hate this game for so many reasons, because I do think it needs to be 2010 Michigan State, and it cannot be 2008 Utah, because I think the optics of the program, especially before that recruiting class from like a week and a half ago, the optics of the program are at like a pretty big low for the first time in a while in the Saban era. And I think you have to go out there and prove a point and win, and probably win big, because in the same way that I said this for the Texas game going into the season, there's no chance that anyone's going to give Bama any respect for winning this game. Like if they lose, there'll be a laughing stock. Everyone will make fun of them, how bad the team was and blah, blah, blah. If they win, well, you should have beat them. It's a lose-lose situation, I feel like, for Bama, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and then I got another one about another SEC situation coming up tomorrow. We have both South Carolina taking on Notre Dame and Tennessee Clemson. Which one do you think is the more intriguing matchup for their team, and then kind of springboarding into next year, whether it's Tennessee or South Carolina? Which one are you more intrigued by in the game featuring the SEC teams?
Well, I mean, I would love to see South Carolina close out with, another surprising win, especially with a team with that kind of brand name with Notre Dame. But the one that is most intriguing is Clemson, Tennessee, and it's because of the quarterback situation on both sides. I've said this, and maybe I'll be proven wrong. I mean, Joe Milton can throw the blank out of the football, right? But when you look at Heupel's offense and what it's predicated on, you have to be accurate downfield. And Joe Milton is not accurate at anywhere on the field. So I think that going into this game, I think it's going to be a Clemson win, for one. And I think that when they leave after the 60 minutes is up and they leave Miami, you're going to hear Tennessee fans genuinely concerned about the quarterback situation for the first time in 2 years, and wondering if that 5-star Nico that's coming in from California should be the starter over Joe Milton. I think it's going to be a real interesting offseason, because I just don't think you can say enough about Hendon Hooker and what he meant to that offense and that program.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. Always good stuff with Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast, as well as Saturday Down South. Chris, as always, we appreciate you for carving out some time for us. Enjoyed it. We'll talk again soon, but appreciate your time today.
Yeah, of course, man. It was great talking to you. Stop drinking milk, guys. Stop drinking milk.
Thanks, Chris.
We'll keep it skim.
Chris Marler, always entertaining. Probably the most entertaining guest that we have.
Easily, and he's so quick as far as as far as just the comebacks in general, and we don't prep them with questions as far as what we're going to ask. We kind of ask just kind of stream of consciousness, and yeah, he's gold every time.
He is. Chris Marler, you can follow him on Twitter at Vern Funquist. Listen to him on the College Football Uncensored podcast. Chris Marler, always great with us here on WKXX Live. We'll jump to a break. More to come. We'll talk some Alabama football next.
The Department of Labor can help workers and employees
Fox Sports 102.9. It is WKXX Live. Chase Robinson, Gerhard Mathangani. We roll through this Thursday afternoon. And we are just a couple of days away from a full day of college football. Good college football, hopefully, is what we see on Saturday. But Alabama and Kansas State will start the day off, which is strange to say, the Sugar Bowl, like Chris Marler, our last guest, was just saying. You know, the Sugar Bowl should be a nighttime game there in New Orleans, but it is an 11 a.m. kick in the Caesar Superdome there in New Orleans. Really against a really good Kansas State team. Alabama's offense will have Bryce Young leading it. It was offense media day yesterday, so we had a chance to hear from Bryce Young, had a chance to hear from Bill O'Brien, and this offense is going to have to come ready to play on Saturday and be a little more in sync than I think we've seen at times, especially in those 11 o'clock games.
Yeah, we've had some extra practice time for this Crimson Tide football team, so we expect to see probably a little bit more cohesiveness offensively with this unit. But you're right. This has been an issue for this team for the majority of the season. Now, thankfully, they have one of the best leaders, if not the best leader in all of college football, leading the charge. So it has been a little bit easier because you do have Bryce Young, who's so skilled and at the same time can make the adjustments. But you don't want to make things harder than they have to be. And so far that'll be a kind of a theme for this team, I think, as they move along, because, it has been a struggle at times here, but with the extra practice time, you would think it's an extra chance, more chances in practice to get into sync and get into rhythm.
Bill O'Brien spoke to just the fact that there have been offensive struggles this season for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Yeah,
and really, the way the question was framed, you don't hear the question in this. It was about the wide receivers, and he was trying to deflect off of that, saying that, it's not necessarily on one position group, even though, from the casual viewer perspective, we can kind of see that, you have the best quarterback and a pretty solid offensive line. But Bill O'Brien says he included the blame is to kind of go around for the struggles.
I think every season is challenging, and it's each in its own way. I mean, I think that this season there have been times where we've been very, very productive. Other times maybe not as consistent as we wanted to be. I think everybody plays a part in that. I don't think it's just one position or one person. I think it's a team game. At the end of the day, we've been very good for most of the season, but in certain times during the season we weren't as consistent as we wanted to be, and hopefully we've really worked on that the last 2 weeks, and we'll play a very consistent, productive football game on Saturday. And look, I think at the end of the day, like I said, this team has practiced hard. They've played hard. You're talking about a 10-2 record, the record that Coach Saban has of 15 seasons of 10 or more wins. I mean, that's incredible. That's an incredible record, and I think as a football team we take a lot of pride in that. And like I said earlier, it's been a lot of fun to work with this team this year.
Bill O'Brien there. You don't get to hear the coordinators at Alabama very much just before the season, and then when you get to the bowl game or whatever is really the only times you get to hear from the Alabama coordinators. So you have to imagine that with Bill O'Brien taking to the podium yesterday, that he was going to get some questions asked about his future.
Yeah, certainly so. And there's a lot of reports out there. Tom Curran, a really good reporter from the Boston area, he's already made the speculations that Bill O'Brien will make his return back to the Northeast, going back up north to rejoin with Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots as their offensive coordinator. It's one of these situations where you hardly get this in sports. You hardly get this in football. The coaching carousel brings out a situation where it helps all parties involved. And this is the possible, I'm talking possible, we could dive into this a little bit more later, the possible route that Bill O'Brien could take from college to the NFL. I think it helps out everybody. I think it helps out Alabama. I think it helps out the New England Patriots. And it's a weird situation. However, staying with the company line, staying with the company phrase, he didn't lie necessarily, but he did mention, that he's got some buddies in the NFL. So you'll hear about that and about the Patriots specifically.
The focus for me and for this coaching staff and for these players is really been on these games that we're playing. You know, this game coming up, the games that we played this year, the games that we played last year. I mean, I think those things, you know, almost every year I've been in coaching, at least over the last 12 years for me, have come up a lot. And those are things that are addressed after the season. We are very focused on this game. We've been focused on every game we've played here this year and last year. So, you know, like I said, it's kind of that time of the year when things come up and things pop up. I haven't spoken to anybody in New England since probably last April when I went by and saw those guys when I was up there. So, you know, I wish them well in their last however many games they have left. But, you know, we're very focused on this game and focused on coaching this team to the best of our ability.
You mentioned not having been in contact with anybody from the Patriots. Have there been any other NFL teams that you've been in contact with? And this is obviously the last year of your contract. Is there any interest in returning for another year?
I have a lot of friends in the NFL, so the answer would be yes to that. I mean, I have a lot of coaching friends in the NFL, so yeah, they're some of my closest friends. So, but relative to working in the NFL, no, and relative to working here, like I said, I love it here. I love my experience here. I'm very focused on this game coming up, and then whatever conversations happen after this game, those will take place when they take place. But really, focused on this game and doing as good a job as I can with the players and the coaching staff to you know, have a productive offense on Saturday.
As Alabama offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien, with all those friends in the NFL, you got to imagine that all it would take is about a phone call, say, "Hey, bud, need a job."
Yeah, it'd be like one text to one Bill Belichick in the in that Boston area. I do think that he's saying all the right things, and it's always hard to go. It's almost impossible to go from the NFL to college because the NFL season is longer. It's easier to go from college to the NFL, especially when you've been a college coach before.
Yeah.
When you've been a college head coach before, the recruiting cycle goes back around. The head coaching cycle goes back around. Power 5 jobs get filled. You don't even get rumored to be interested in one of them. I didn't hear Bill O'Brien's name come up for any job. Not the Wisconsin job, not the Nebraska job. Rumors about Georgia Tech, but that ended very quickly. Not any whispers about Colorado. I mean, all the Power 5 jobs. And he was the head coach at Penn State when Penn State was pretty good. So it wasn't like you're rolling the dice on some guy who hasn't done it before.
Yeah.
So it just leads you to believe that he might be looking, back to the NFL. And like I said, it would make sense for all, because just look at the Patriots offense right now with Mac Jones struggling in year 2.
So that was Bill O'Brien. Bryce Young also speaking yesterday. And I think people have wanted to hear from him. We've heard Coach Saban talk about it. We've heard the reports. Bryce Young is playing, but to be able to hear it from him just on kind of how this decision happened.
Yeah, he's such, to me, the quintessential leader. He's the guy that you want leading your program, because I think he just has his head on straight and he does things really well. And Bill O'Brien in his press conference praised Bryce Young, for maybe 15 minutes about just the kind of guy he is. And you're right, he did talk a little bit about, what made him as a top 5 lottery, not lottery, you don't have lotteries in the NFL, but a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, what makes him want to play with his team. And it just kind of reinforces everything that you think about him as being a good leader and a good guy for the reasons why, he wants to go back out there one more time.
How I looked at it was just an opportunity, another opportunity to play with my brothers. And I love the guys on my team. I love this team. I love this program. Going to work with the group of guys that I'm privileged to go to work with every single day. I see how hard we work as a group, how much we pour into this, and how much this means to us, how much it means to me. And it was easy for me because I just feel grateful that I get to go out and play with these guys, to compete in practice, to share that field. And for me, looking at it, I looked at it as another opportunity. And for me as a leader of this team, which is something I pride myself in, there's a lot that I think it's most important to lead by example, to make sure that any time that I'm leading, I'm telling other people to do things. I have to do that first. I have to make sure that I'm doing the right things, and I have to be comfortable being held accountable. And for me, another opportunity to lead the team in every way that I can, and to be out there and run out of the tunnel again with my teammates. It was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So I'm just honored to be a part of this team. And as a leader, I felt like it was important to me to make sure that we finished this year.
Bryce Young there on his decision to play. I'm glad that that Bryce Young, Will Anderson are playing. I think it's good for this game. I think it's good for college football to see these two guys who are going to go very, very high in the NFL draft to want to come out and play. And, a lot of folks said, well, maybe they'll just play a little bit. That's not how Nick Saban works, though. You're either all in or you're not. And so as long as Alabama has a chance to win that game, I think Bryce Young and Will Anderson are going to be in the game, and they're going to give it all they have. Yeah, that's just the kind of guys they are.
Exactly, and I think that you hit on a really good point. I think that the players want to play to be able to win the game too. They're not just going out there for some victory lap. They're not going out there for some victory tour. These are competitive guys that want to win their final game. They want to end off their careers. And I know they haven't said it, publicly yet, but let's just call it for what it is. They want to end their careers off on a good note, and you don't dress up for this game, to play a couple of, honorary snaps and then leave. Right. They want to be able to do it. And, Kansas State's a good opponent. It's a Big 12 champion, and they just knocked off a team in the playoff. You have a chance to knock off a team that is in the playoff and kind of solidify and maybe, throw some down in people's heads that think that you're not a top 5, a top 4 football team. So, yeah, this is not some kind of just a give me situation for these guys. They actually want to go play and want to go win it for themselves and for their team.
And Bryce Young, what the career he's had at Alabama, winning the Heisman Trophy, being the first quarterback to win the Heisman at Alabama, the incredible numbers, the comeback drives that he's led this team on, just a amazing career that Bryce Young has had at Alabama, and he had a chance to speak on that as well. Yeah,
I mean, and I like it because he's not giving, definite finality about going to the NFL, but everybody knows it. And so he's answering these questions in kind. And it just goes back to show, but back to what I was saying earlier, just goes back to show what kind of guy he is. And he reflected a lot about his time in Alabama, understanding he still has one game left, but just in case these specific reporters don't get a chance to talk to him again, the ones in New Orleans, gave him kind of a glimpse on his time leaving his hometown of California, flying across the country to go play at Alabama.
It's hard to put that in words. I mean, from coming here, being so much younger as a freshman, this being such a big step for me, not just on the field, but academically and as a man. Growing up, learning to be far away from family, live on my own. Obviously that, Alabama gave me that, and on the field, to be able to play with such great players, to be coached by the best, just to be embraced by, the best fan base in the country. I can't describe how much the university means to me. So I'm forever grateful. I mean, this is, just having this opportunity and being here for the time I've been has been a blessing. So I'm super happy to be a part of the team.
Bryce Young there in the immediate availability yesterday, but he will be starting. He will be leading the offense out of the field Saturday morning against Kansas State, and you gotta like Alabama's chances with him in the game. Again, you think back to his career, you think back to all these drives that he's led these teams on, just as cool as can be. You got to like their chances with him on the field.
Yeah, if it is a tight game, which I don't necessarily expect it to be, but if it is a tight game, you have the best player with the ball in his hands late. We saw it at Texas. We've seen it other times during his career. This is who you want. And I think everybody on the offensive staff feels that kind of sense of finality. And whether it's Bill O'Brien kind of in the back of his head knowing that this is his last game in Tuscaloosa, whether it's Bryce Young maybe in the front of his mind knowing this is his last game in Tuscaloosa, Jahmyr Gibbs possibly done it with his time here in T-Town as well. Some of these receivers, who knows, what's in store for them as they move forward. So, yeah, there is a sense of finality here. And I do think that, everybody in this game wants to win it for them too. So just that extra sense of motivation, I don't see it just coming from Bryce Young, just coming from Will Anderson. I see it coming from the team as well, saying, hey, we will honor you because you wanted to join us in this final game.
So Sugar Bowl coming up, oddly enough, Saturday morning, 11 a.m. on ESPN. That'll be the game leading into the college football playoff semifinals on Saturday. We'll jump to a break here. Want to dive into the NFL. We talked yesterday about a quarterback who is being benched. There's a quarterback change on another team as well, and they play tonight. We'll talk about that next.
The Press Box, where the biggest name.
It is WKXX Live, Fox Sports 1029. Chase Robinson and Gerhard Mathigani here with you on this Thursday afternoon. 256-413-1029 is our phone number. We have got some NFL action coming up tonight. Thursday night football involves the Tennessee Titans hosting the Cowboys there at Nissan Stadium in Nashville. And the news came out today that the Titans are expected to start a new quarterback tonight. And, it's been a rough last few weeks. 5-game losing streak now?
Yep.
For the Titans. And so we talked yesterday, the Raiders were making a change at quarterback. And now it appears that Josh Dobbs is going to be starting at quarterback for the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, this comes after really kind of a rough start for their first-round draft pick in Malik Willis. And there were some questions about Malik Willis, not necessarily the character and the arm and the talent. It was just being able to grasp the entire NFL offense, and then also be able to play within the system. I don't know if Tennessee system really vibes with his skill set, so we'll see. But the rumor is, the source is saying that Willis will hit the bench. He's been there in replace of Ryan Tannehill. He's had 3 starts so far this season, and in all 3 starts, he's failed to get over 100 yards. He had 99 yards in the last game when they failed to beat the Houston Texans, and Houston Texans are not very good. Newsflash there. And so it's an interesting situation. But if you are a Tennessee fan, if you're a Tennessee Vols fan, it's actually kind of good because you have a former Tennessee Vol, suiting up in his first NFL start for the Tennessee Titans. And so it's a pretty interesting situation there as Josh Dobbs takes the reins. But for Malik Willis, I don't know if he might be able to come into the game. I don't know if he'll be a part of the game plan at all, but as of right now, he struggled a little bit in his first year.
Yep. So new quarterback for the Titans, and Mike Vrabel, head coach there in Tennessee, talked about now just kind of handling what Thursday night game's going to look like.
Yeah, Thursday night games are always a little bit different because you're playing on the short week for the most part, and then you have a chance to play at night, so you have all day to kind of get ready for the game. And this was a game that at the beginning of the season that was looked at as, hey, this is possibly going to be a big game as it relates to the playoffs. Obviously not the case this year, but he talks a little bit about the way he'll handle it with his guys heading into tonight's game.
Well, you try to get a little bit in, but I don't want to you just haven't been in those positions to sit in meetings all day. I think it's important to get them up. What we've done in the past is get them up, get over here. We're at home, so we have a great facility. Feed them and have some brief meetings just to kind of stimulate them a little bit. Maybe get them up, move them around, walk through, and really just try to give them the day to, to put themselves in a in a mindset to go, prepare and win and, perform. So just because you have the extra time, I don't think it's beneficial to sit there and meet all the way up until 5 o'clock. But I think it's important to do a little bit in the morning and then give these guys an opportunity to get into their routine that they have for the game.
Mike Vrabel there, head coach of the Tennessee Titans. The Titans have a team who has been good this year in the Dallas Cowboys, making the trip to Nashville. But you got to be impressed with what Dallas has put together this year under Dak Prescott.
Yeah, 11-4. This division last year was called the NFC least by most people, but with the emergence of the Philadelphia Eagles, who right now sit number 1, and the Dallas Cowboys right now, who sit number 2. This is a really interesting situation playing out here in this division that was considered terrible last year. And the Cowboys now, with their win last week, they're still in the hunt for the division crown over the Philadelphia Eagles. So, a good chance today to go get it against a depleted team that's starting a new quarterback. And so they can, get that 12th win and be back on their way to winning a division crown.
Yeah, and, this is an important game, like you said, for the Dallas Cowboys. Here is had a chance to hear Dak Prescott break that down for us.
As I said before, it's not necessarily in our hands to control. So for me, it's about worrying about this week right now, what's at hand. Tennessee Titans here in a couple of days, making sure that we go out there and we control what we can, and that's winning this game and being prepared and making sure that we're just continuing to build off of last game, really, and just make sure, as I said before, get this momentum going in the right way, in the right direction, all the confidence that you can get from each and every win, and move forward on that. And if something happens over on that other side that allows us to, hell yeah, that'd be great.
Dak Prescott, 2,450 yards this year, 20 touchdowns. He's having a great year with the Dallas Cowboys, and they are 14-point favorites tonight in Nashville.
Yeah, 14 points, mainly because they're starting a new quarterback, and there was some talk that Tennessee might be sitting some guys. I haven't heard Derrick Henry and some of their main starters sitting out in this game, but you would have to expect a team on the outside looking into the playoff bubble might be packing it in a little bit. We don't know for sure, but the Cowboys certainly have a whole lot to play for. And you heard there at the end, if we get some help from these guys, then it'll be great. So we'll see, how the Cowboys handle it. But coming off the win last week, they're once again in really good position as they head into their final two games.
So you got that tonight, 7:15 on Amazon Prime Video. Cowboys at Titans. How far do you think the Cowboys could go with a playoff spot? 11-4 of the year. What's their playoff chances look like?
Their ceiling to me wasn't super high about middle of the year. I now think that they're a true playoff contender, a true contender to win a Super Bowl. They have all the makeup. Great defense that can attack the passer, that can defend against, that can attack the quarterback, that can defend against the pass. A really potent offense. I mean, even when the backup quarterback came in Cooper, he was great as well. And you talk about a guy like CeeDee Lamb, who's emerged as the number one threat, took over for Amari Cooper. This is a dangerous football team. I think that they can. They're on that short list. If you talk about the maybe top 5 teams that have a chance to win a Super Bowl, I put the Cowboys right there in the mix.
That's interesting. We'll see what the Cowboys can do, but you can watch them tonight, Amazon Prime Video at 7:15 as they take on the Titans. We'll jump to a break. More to come. We'll roll into our final segment of the day next.
Hi, I'm Dr.
It is WKXX Live. We roll into our final segment here on this Thursday. As tomorrow it'll be our last show of 2022. As the calendars will flip over on Sunday to 2023. And it'll be some good football to end the year. Got some football going on right now. Syracuse trails Minnesota 28-13. You've got Oklahoma in action today against Florida State in the Cheez-It Bowl at 4:30, and then Texas and Washington tonight at 8 o'clock. I learned something this week reading an article about the Cheez-It Bowl. When it comes to what I've always called Cheez-Its, if it's one Cheez-It, it is a Cheez-It. If it is multiple, it is Cheez-It crackers. There's no such thing as Cheez-Its.
Wow. I didn't know that either. It might be some Mandela effects actually happening, because I think I've always called it a Cheez-It or Cheez-Its.
Yeah.
When I have multiple, you pour it in your hands. Like, yeah, I'm eating Cheez-Its. Say, what are you eating for your snack? But no.
That is Cheez-It crackers.
Learn something new today. Speaking of something new, there was something when you said the Cheez-It thing, it reminded me that I saw something a little bit earlier, and I wanted to pass it along the show because it was insane to me when I heard it, and I have to give credit where it's due. It was to Adam Schefter, I believe, that put it out. It is. So on this day, Tom Brady has spent exactly half of his life in the NFL. He was drafted when he was 22 years, 8 months, and 13 days old. 199th overall selection of the 2000 draft. It's now been 22 years, 8 months, and the 13th day after he was drafted. So half of his life, he's been in the National Football League.
That is crazy.
I know.
What a stat there from old Adam Schefter. Today, though, we did lose a man. What a legend that was lost, really, in all of the sports world, but especially in the soccer world.
Yeah, Pele, probably the greatest player of all time, which is insane because that wasn't even a distinction until this year when Messi ended up winning. Lionel Messi ended up winning the World Cup, kind of the last thing on his resume. Some people will say he's now the greatest of all time, but Pele was considered hands down. It wasn't even a discussion. You know, like we have it in basketball, we have it in baseball and some of these other sports, but Pele was considered hands down the greatest soccer player of all time. And one of those guys where he's so good that you know him by the one name and you understand him by that. But yeah, he passed away today at the age of 82. One of the guys that just kind of, he almost transcended his sport. You know him much more than just the sport. You know him for the human he is and the humanitarian that he is. And you know, as we get closer to the end of the year, you start to think of the people that we have lost throughout the course of the calendar year. And he's obviously one of the big names that has passed away. And you think about just the calendar year this year, you have guys like Bill Russell, who we lost earlier, Vin Scully, who we lost earlier, Vince Dooley, the head coach at Georgia for a really long time, won a national championship there. Dan Reeves, who went to 4 Super Bowls, he passed away. Then here recently with Coach Mike Leach of Mississippi State, and Franco Harris, who passed away just last week. It's been a rough year. Every year it does seem like we have some of these, but the names and the kind of titans of their industry that we lost this year, this is kind of the one of the top ones once again.
Yeah, it is. But sad today, what he did for the sport, huge. Again, you said people know him by those 4 letters, Pele, and just a true titan in the sports world. Lost today again at age of 82. We will have a lot to get to on the show tomorrow as we'll look back over the year that was 2022, all that happened in the sports world. Excited to be with you tomorrow from 2 to 4. And so I hope you make plans to join us then. We'll have Jacksonville State basketball for you tomorrow night as well. 5:30 airtime, 6 o'clock tip for Jacksonville State and North Alabama as ASUN play gets underway for those two teams coming up tomorrow night. And so looking forward to that. We'll have that here on Fox Sports 102.9. But that should be a great start, kind of great end of the year, but great start for the ASUN play.
Oh, no doubt about it. And the ASUN seems to be really competitive this year. We've already talked a couple of times about North Alabama getting a big win already over a Power 5. We expect this team in this season overall to be really competitive in the ASUN, and a Jacksonville State team who won the regular season and represented the conference in the Big Dance last year.
So we'll have that for you coming up tomorrow night. We'll preview that some for you on the show tomorrow. That's it for us today. Have a great rest of your Thursday. We'll talk to you tomorrow from 2 to 4 here on Fox Sports 102.9.
Fox